stand by. I'll tell you if we want to run it again.
Well,
How about it, Mr. Walton?
Lists that rank the greatest movies ever made typically have a battle for first between these two films. One film was ahead of its time, expanding the possibilities of filmmaking, while the other paid tribute to old Hollywood films that preceded it. For this video, I will look at what makes these films great on their own, what they have in common, and which should be considered the best. Each story's main character is a tragic figure. Both attempted to rebel in their youth, trying to avoid their predetermined lives, but kept getting pulled back in. Michael made 2 attempts to start a life away from his family, once with Kay and another with Apollonia, but both failed.
No! No, Apollonia!
After Apollonia's death, Michael returns home to Kay without any youth or ideals left. He has accepted his fate as the future Don. Kane is also married twice and loses them the same way Michael lost Kay. After the initial love affair, Kane looks at his wives as just another piece of furniture and not as an independent person. The explanation for Kane's unsuccessful relationships stem from him being rejected by his mother when he was a boy. This childhood separation prevents Kane from ever achieving a loving relationship. One element of The Godfather that I don't think gets enough attention is that it shows how much of a burden the past is to its characters. As much as the Corleone family talks about the future and becoming a legitimate business, they are slaves to preserving old traditions, resolving old feuds, and remembering the old country. The past being a burden is also the key to Kane's character. The change from being a poor boy in Colorado to one of the richest men on the planet almost overnight was traumatic for Kane. After he left home, he couldn't help but see everyone else wanting something from him. This lack of trust explains his initial attraction to Susan Alexander. He is not attracted to her as a person, but attracted to the fact that she knows nothing about him.
no, I'm not a magician.
Oh, I was just joking.
You really don't know who I am?
Well, you told me your name, Mr. Kane, but I'm awful ignorant, but I guess you caught on to that. You know, I bet it turns out I've heard your name a million times.
You really like me, though, even though you don't know who I am.
Oh, I surely do. You've been
glad you do.
wonderful.
This ignorance opens him up emotionally and brings him back to the last time nobody knew who he was, when he was a child. This is where Kane is way ahead of its time by showing the consequences of young fame and fortune. It is terribly damaging when you are unable to be who you want to be, and only what others want you to be. Both films critique and satirize the American success story. Kane was initially based on the newspaper magnate William Randolph Hearst and his Hearst Castle. Hearst's suspicion that Citizen Kane was about his life motivated him to use his newspapers to slam the film before it was even out. Film critics were so afraid to anger Hearst, they avoided praising the film for years, and it wasn't until the 1960s that Citizen Kane started to be called the greatest film ever made. Francis Ford Coppola viewed the war between rival mafia families much like rival corporations. Each had their CEOs, their vice presidents, consultants, and each worried about their survival as a business.
Now we have the unions, we have the gambling, and they're the best things to have. But narcotics, It's a thing of the future. Now, if we don't get a piece of that action, we risk everything we have. I mean, not now, but 10 years from now. So, what's your answer gonna be, Pop?
It is very sad that films like The Godfather or Wall Street have been seriously embraced when they were actually made as warnings to the audience. Famous businessmen, political families, and especially dictatorships love The Godfather's family structure. Famously, Saddam Hussein and Kim Jong-il loved the film. I could continue to list what these films have in common. The impeccable acting, cinematography, screenwriting. But I would like to describe the major difference that sets these films apart and what ends up making one more impressive than the other. The difference is one was trying to expand the film medium and succeeded, while the other just paid tribute to it. Coppola once said that he made The Godfather to be his version of an old Hollywood studio film. He succeeded way beyond his expectations, making arguably the greatest Hollywood movie ever. But it was a film perfecting the past and did not attempt to move film into the future. Unbelievably, RKO Pictures gave Orson Welles no studio interference and full story control for Citizen Kane, his first film. This allowed Welles and cinematographer Greg Toland to take their time setting up experimental shots and special effects. What also separates the two films is that Citizen Kane is told with a flashback framing device. This device likely frustrated early audiences, but it brilliantly reinforces the fact that nobody fully understood Kane when he was alive, and set up the devastating reveal at the end of the film. That is why I give Kane the edge between the two films. It is one of the rare movies to push the medium into a new direction, even if it took several years to be appreciated.
Throw that junk.